The song that we began our service with this morning, as I mentioned, is in the new hymnal supplement, Singing the Journey. And it is based on Gauguin's masterpiece, Where Do We Come From? What Are We? Where Are We Going? These are the great questions that form the basis of almost everything philosophical and theological. Where do we come from? Every society, culture, and religion has tried to answer these questions throughout recorded history. Philosophers, thinkers, artists, explorers, scientists, and storytellers have all contributed their understandings, introducing a multitude of answers, metaphors, art, tales, and theories. Some have been poetic, some mystical, some technical, some contentious. All try to tell a story because the one thing that we have, if nothing else, to bequeath the generations that follow us is our story. Libby told me that she invited various people to come share with you some of the faith traditions that represent the diversity from which Unitarian Universalists derive our inspiration. Though my father and his family were very Jewish, his family were Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn, I found myself becoming more interested in and intrigued by my Jewish heritage after I became a Unitarian Universalist, much more so than before. Today I'm going to share some of the reasons for that, and along with it, what attracts me in my core to both Judaism and Unitarian Universalism. So where did we come from? When I was in high school, one of the formative experiences of my life happened when I was involved with a production of the play Inherit the Wind by Jerome Lawrence and Robert E. Lee. The play was a dramatic retelling of the so-called Scopes monkey trial that was actually held in Dayton, Tennessee in 1925. This real trial pitted the teaching of Darwin's theory of evolution against the teachings in Genesis in the Bible. In the true story, in the buckle of the Bible Belt, state of Tennessee, a law had been passed prohibiting the teaching of evolution. A young organization, the American Civil Liberties Union, sought after and found a test case in Dayton where a substitute teacher, John Scopes, agreed to break the law so that he could be challenged in court. Not quite like the play. There was no love interest. The science teacher wasn't, anyway. They found a guy who was willing to do this. In the great courtroom pairing of Clarence Darrow and William Jennings Bryan, it was an historic, amazing thing, and brought with it quite the circus atmosphere, complete with organ grinders with their monkeys and revival meetings. That part of the movie was true. As a teenager in 1966, growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, I loved that play. I was awed by the great dialogue, the drama, the characters, and on my own, I read what I could about the subject. Of course, I was mostly interested in Darrow and Mencken. I really didn't want to know about Bryan. He was the bad guy. At the same time, I thought that the story was really silly and dated. I could not imagine any state outlawing the teaching of evolution. And for anyone to prefer the creation story as stated in the Bible was just totally beyond my comprehension. And I just found yesterday a report that was, somebody said, truly depressing. 45% of Americans in 2008 answered true to the statement, human beings as we know them today developed from earlier species of animals. Less than half the people in this country. Whereas in Japan it was 78%, Europe 70%, China 69%, South Korea 64%. Words fail. So, as a freshman in high school, we studied biology and evolution, period. So, silly premise or not, Inherit the Wind was just plain great drama. The pivotal scene in the play, for those of you who remember, had Henry Drummond, who was the character of Clarence Darrow, examining Matthew Harrison Brady, who was William Jennings Bryan, on the witness stand. Brady having been called in as an expert witness on the Bible, because all of the scientific witnesses have been thrown out. I will never forget this exchange. Drummond says, "Listen to this, Genesis 4:16. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod in the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife." Where the heck did she come from? Brady said, "Who?" "Mrs. Cain, Cain's wife. If in the beginning there were only Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, where'd this extra woman spring from? Ever figure that out?" And Brady says, "No, sir, I will leave the agnostics to hunt for her." Never bothered you? Never bothered me. Figure somebody pulled off a creation in the next county? The Bible satisfies me, and that's enough. Well, then Drummond goes on to ask Brady whether or not he believed the story of Jonah swallowing the whale and other biblical ideas that stretch the imagination and defy natural law. For Drummond or Darrow to ask the right questions, to challenge creationism, he had to know the Bible. At this, Brady, and in real life Brian, began to falter. The questions got harder and harder, and Brady struggled mightily to hold on to his creation story in the face of rational questions. This play stayed with me as I grew older and started asking those big questions. Where do we come from? And how does that figure into who we are and where we're going? As a child, I never thought I needed to learn about the stories in the Bible. I thought so even less as I entered adulthood. They were all just stories that were irrelevant to my daily living. But how was I to know that the Inherit the Wind was going to recur again in real life? And actually not all that far from here in Dover. How was I to know that in order to be